I know. It feels like there's a new thing to talk about with Phainon every other patch. This man just keeps on getting new potential teammates, partially due to the nature of Phainon being a hypercarry who soaks up buffs really well, and partially due to Phainon's teams just naturally having a dead slot for whatever new support happens to be the newest meta buffer. In this case, that support is Robin Summeretto. The introduction of Robin Summeretto, or as we'll be calling her, Robinetto, shakes things up not only for Phainon, but for Cerydra as well. After all, Cerydra is tied to the hip with Phainon for many players' accounts, so we will be largely focusing on how Robinetto affects the Phainon-Cerydra team up, as well as how you want to prioritize your pulls in a Phainon-Cerydra team, especially considering we're coming upon a Cerydra rerun. But let's start off by talking about what Robinetto does. Robinetto gives upwards of 40% defense thread, 20% vulnerability, a massive attack buff that can climb all the way up to 2000 or 3000 attack, which is double or sometimes even triple Cerydra's attack buff, as well as an on-demand action advance that happens to also give energy via her ultimate. Just by looking at these numbers, it's obvious Robinetto is very powerful, one of the strongest damage ampers in the game by far. Her buffing numbers are so far beyond Cerydra that the only thing Cerydra can possibly offer to compete is her double skill mechanic, which is certainly relevant for a lot of characters, case in point, Phainon. But how does the release of such a powerful character like Robinetto shake things up for Phainon specifically? I won't go into Phainon team building specifics too much in this video, but I did release another recent video that will tell you everything you need to know about modern Phainon team building prior to Robinetto's release. So, using this chart, let's explore how Robinetto shakes things up. As you can see, Phainon has two main team paths that he can choose, Cyrene Teams or Sparkle Teams. You can still clear content without either of these two characters, but you're just purposefully nerfing your own damage at that point, which is fine if you're okay with that, but in an optimal setup, you're going to want your Phainon to be played in one of these two teams. Also, Phainon is assumed to be at E2S1 for all of this, because, to be quite frank, you probably shouldn't be playing or investing too much into Phainon if he isn't at this investment level. So if you don't have E2S1 Phainon, you should probably have that as your number one priority before any of the information in this video applies to you. Don't get me wrong, everything in this video will still apply to making the best Phainon team possible, even for an E0 Phainon, but it's just that none of it takes a higher priority than E2 Phainon for your pulls. Anyway, let's start by talking about the Sparkle team. Since Sparkle was given out for free and has been Phainon's strongest teammate when compared to an E0 Cyrene ever since her Nova Flare, generally you're going to be playing Sparkle alongside another action advancer like RMC or Sunday or Branya, with RMC being the baseline assumption since they're free. In this scenario, should you pull Cerydra for the final slot on a Sparkle team, or does her value get eclipsed by Robinetto's buffs? Well, while Robinetto does provide very strong buffs, her issue is that she only provides core flames to Phainon via her ultimate's action advance, which is generally only happening once per battle. If you ever end up in a scenario where she miraculously managed to get a second ultimate, your team has probably died by then, unless you're in an apocalyptic shadow stage that refreshes your ultimates, or something like that. So, Robinetto cannot be relied on for consistent Phainon core flame stacks. In addition to that, triple action advancer comps are abysmal for Sparkle because her buffs only last for 2 turns. So if Phainon gets action advanced a third time, he loses Sparkle's buffs and loses most of his damage. You can replace the other action advancer with a character like, say, Tingyun in order to use Sparkle and Robinetto together, but at that point, you would have rather just pulled Cerydra, which leads us to the conclusion. In a Sparkle team without Cerydra, pull Cerydra first. That is the most important teammate for Sparkle. I know there's been a bit of debate recently about Sparkle being able to replace Cerydra for low-cost Phainon clears, but the real answer is always that you would rather just use the two of them together rather than pitting them against each other. Only after you have an E0 Cerydra for your Phainon Sparkle team should you then consider Robinetto. Now that Cerydra is on the team, Robinetto is no longer a third action advancer and is instead only the second action advancer on the team, meaning she can finally be played with Sparkle in this team without breaking Sparkle's buff uptime. However, this team still has the issue of core flame stack generation. Robin gets to use her ultimate to advance Phainon during the first rotation, but past that, she has no way to give him on-demand core flame stacks later in the fight. Now, again, there are some fights that give you a free ultimate, like Lygus or Iron Tomb or certain APOC rotations, but obviously these enemies or environments won't be around forever. Ironically, the only way to solve Robinetto's core flame issue is to pull Cerydra's E1, which is famously the Phainon core flame Eidolon. Therefore, when it comes to the Sparkle team variants, think of the Cerydra versus Robinetto debate like this. Only pull Robinetto for your Phainon Sparkle team after you have pulled Cerydra E1, because you will need that E1 Cerydra in order for Robinetto to even function in this team past the first ultimate. Technically, Phainon E6 also accomplishes the same thing of solving the core flame issue, so if you're a Phainon E6 owner, then there you go, the same applies to you. So, for Phainon Sparkle players, you should still pull Cerydra and Cerydra's E1 before Robinetto. But then we have the other side of the spectrum, the Cyrene team. In my Phainon team building recommendations, happens. I said that Cyrene generally isn't recommended nowadays for Phainon, unless you can afford to get Cyrene's E2. This isn't because E0 Cyrene is bad with Phainon by any means, as long as you know what you're doing, but it's mainly just because Sparkle's Nova Flare was so powerful that it outshined E0 Cyrene. However, with the release of Robinetto, this is no longer the case. While Robinetto had quite a few caveats when competing against Cerydra in a Sparkle team, there are no such caveats in a Cyrene team. Cyrene obviously solves the issue of Robinetto's lackluster core flame stacking, since Cyrene negates the need for core flames altogether, and Robinetto is able to utilize the exact same rotation as Remembrance Trailblazer in order to get Cyrene's ultimate very fast, even with an E0 Cyrene. I can't showcase the rotation on screen in this video, but I'll attach a link in the description showing what the Robinetto Cyrene team rotation looks like, so please check that out if you want a full visual demonstration, but I'll try to explain it here. It's not too different from the RMC rotation from this video of mine, except you substitute RMC with Robinetto. Pretend the RMC on screen right now is Robinetto. The rotation will be the exact same anyway. The key difference is that Cerydra needs to spam basic attacks so that Robinetto enters her fever state at the exact time. Robinetto needs to go first, but thanks to her V4 buffs, she has a pseudo built-in Von Whack on her technique, which helps her a lot. We start with Robinetto's skill to get her ultimate, thanks to Phainon's technique giving her free energy at the start of battle. We then use Cyrene's skill for recollection stacks, and then Cerydra does her first basic attack. Ideally, Cerydra should be as close to Cyrene's speed as possible while going behind her. We hold onto Cerydra's ultimate and instead use Robinetto's ultimate on Cyrene, action advancing her immediately after Cerydra's basic attack, so no action value is lost. Cyrene uses her skill again, and then we immediately use Cerydra's ultimate after Cyrene's turn. If you have Dance 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 on Cerydra, you get the full benefit of it here. Unlike in the RMC rotation, where Phainon needs to basic attack, he'll actually have enough skill points to skill here for a bit more damage. Robinetto then uses her basic attack. Why not use her skill to instantly enter the fever state? Well, that's because we need the fever state to happen after Cerydra's turn. If Robinetto enters the fever state here immediately after her own turn, she won't give Cyrene the additional recollection stack required to get Cyrene's ultimate in time, so we have to stall Robinetto's fever state. After Robinetto's basic attack, we use another Cyrene skill, and lastly, we get to Cerydra's turn. Cerydra once again has to basic attack. Why is this? Well, Robinetto gains vibe stacks every time an ally attacks. She starts the fight with 7, meaning she needs 5 different attacks over the course of the rotation to reach 12 vibe stacks to enter the fever state at the end of the rotation. Phainon and Robinetto each get to attack once, meaning Cyrene and Cerydra need to give us the remaining 3 vibe stacks. Cyrene has to spam her skill for her own ultimate though, so Cyrene doesn't give us any vibe stacks. This means Cerydra needs to use both of her turns to basic attack for Robinetto's vibe stack generation. 2 Cerydra basic attacks, combined with Cerydra's ultimate being an attack, perfectly gives us Robinetto's 12 vibe stacks right after Cerydra's last basic attack here. In the RMC rotation, you can see we got Cyrene's ultimate just from Cerydra's last basic attack, but that's because Mem's action from earlier gave us a stack for Cyrene. In the Robinetto rotation, you obviously won't have that Mem action, meaning we would need Robinetto to enter her fever state right here after Cerydra's basic attack in order to give Cyrene the last stack for her ultimate. Either way, in both the RMC rotation and the Robinetto rotation, we get the Cyrene ultimate at the exact same time, after Cerydra's second turn, which allows us to enter Phainon's ultimate with enough action value to take 4 turns in the first cycle of Memory of Chaos, so long as the 3 supports were using Von Whack. For very quick speed tuning requirements, Cyrene wants to be 180 speed for her damage buffing trace, and the speed of the other characters revolves around Cyrene's speed. Thanks to Robinetto's built-in Von Whack action advance at the start of battle from her technique, she doesn't need to be built faster than Cyrene to go first. As a general rule, make sure Robinetto is at most 20 speed slower than Cyrene. So if Cyrene is 180 speed, try not to let Robinetto go too far below 160 speed. She technically can go a little bit below there, but remembering to keep her within 20 speed of Cyrene is just easier. Then, Cerydra's speed is important because she's the anchor. Cerydra is the last character to take action, so her speed is what determines when Cyrene gets her ultimate. If you're using Dance 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 on Cerydra, then there's a lot of wiggle room with her speed. So just get her as close to Cyrene's speed as possible, meaning around 140 to 160 out of combat, since she gets 20 speed in combat with her technique. If you aren't using Dance Dance Dance, however, then Cerydra will need at least 181 speed in combat, aka 161 speed out of combat, in order for Phainon to get 4 turns in Memory of Chaos. There are plenty of fights where you don't care about getting Phainon these exact 4 turns, so honestly, you shouldn't worry about it that much, but it's just something worth mentioning if you do want to aim for this speed breakpoint without Dance 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 and to have more consistency in Memory of Chaos. Phainon himself can just remain at base speed. I know some of this speed tuning can be daunting, but there are plenty of ways to help you meet these thresholds. Cyrene can't activate any of the 4-piece buffing relic sets in this team, so she can just use 2-piece speed relic sets, as well as the Herta Shop Lycone for speed. Robinetto gets a ton of speed from her own stat traces, and she can also use Sacerdos since you'll use her ultimate on Phainon after Cyrene refunds everyone's ultimates. giving 1 stack of the Sacrados buff to Phainon. Since Robinetto's speed requirements aren't too hard to meet though, the Deliverer 4-piece set is technically better if you can meet her speed requirements without the Sacrados 2-piece speed buff. Cerydra can also use Sacrados since the crit damage buff can stack from multiple characters, and although Cerydra won't be stacking it very much since she's spamming her basic attack, her technique does still give 1 stack to Phainon, which is nice. The Sacrados 2-piece speed buff will help both Cerydra and Robinetto with their speed requirements. The Hurdle Shop light cone can of course also help Robinetto's speed, but if you need that light cone on Cyrene and you can manage Robinetto's speed without it, then the story's next page is a very good 4-star light cone for Robinetto, thanks to the high amount of HP stats it provides. Robinetto's attack buff scales off of her own HP, so it's the only stat she cares about here aside from speed. She doesn't even want an energy rope for Phainon teams, since she gets her ultimate even without it, so you would rather just stack full HP on Robinetto to max out her attack buff, aside from speed boots, which will probably be mandatory to reach her speed requirements for this rotation. Cyrene's light cone is nice to free up the Hurdle Shop light cone for Robinetto, and Robinetto's own light cone is also nice to lower Robinetto's speed requirements, as well as technically lowering the speed requirements for the rest of the team by 20%. Though I promise it is not that hard to reach these speed thresholds on the 3 ladies, and therefore, I find Robinetto's light cone very unnecessary. So ultimately, Robinetto is a direct RMC upgrade. She accomplishes the exact same rotation as RMC while offering much stronger buffs. The buffs are so strong, in fact, that Robinetto once again launches E0 Cyrene teams into being competitive with E0 Sparkle teams, with E0 Cyrene arguably just being straight up better. Prior to Robinetto, the main benefit to Cyrene teams was the comfort. Your team is never at risk of dying in a Cyrene team thanks to Phainon's infinite ultimate protecting the team, whereas the Sparkle team has a higher risk of dying every time Phainon exits his ultimate. Now, Cyrene teams bring that same comfort while offering higher damage thanks to Robinetto. If you're a Phainon player using him with an E0 Cyrene, then you should always pull Robinetto. In fact, what if I told you that Robinetto is even capable of replacing Cerydra in a Cyrene Phainon team? Yeah, that's how powerful Robinetto is. Instead of running Cerydra Cyrene RMC, you can just run Robinetto Cyrene RMC and get similar results. Now, granted, this is the same thing we discussed earlier with Sparkle and Cerydra, where, sure, you can replace Cerydra with these stronger general supports, but in an ideal world, if you want to maximize your Phainon performance, you want to play Cerydra together with these powerful buffers. So, while it is very funny that you can replace Cerydra with Robinetto here, I do tend to recommend you just use both of them together. But obviously, pulls are finite. If you can only choose to pull either E0 Cerydra or E0 Robinetto for your Phainon Cyrene team, then Robinetto is the better pull because she's a general support who can also be used elsewhere while competing with Cerydra in this slot. On the flip side, Robinetto will likely rerun sooner than Cerydra, so you can take that into account as well and grab Cerydra first if your plan is to eventually get them both anyway. However, let's be honest, most Phainon players probably already have at least E0 Cerydra at this point. So, should you go for E1 Cerydra before getting Robinetto? I know for the Sparkle team, E1 Cerydra was more important than Robinetto, but that's because E1 Cerydra in general is better outside of Cyrene teams. In a Cyrene team, you don't need Cerydra's E1 to fix any of Robinetto's issues, and therefore, you're simply comparing the damage amp of Cerydra's E1 versus upgrading RMC to Robinetto. In this scenario, Robinetto is always going to be better than Cerydra's E1. She's just that much of an upgrade over RMC for Phainon. So let's review the different Phainon team scenarios and when you should aim for Robin Summeretto. And don't worry, we will talk about E2 Cyrene teams after this. First up is the Sparkle team. Let's assume you have the most bare bones Sparkle team possible of Sparkle and RMC, and you're wondering who should round out the team between Cerydra and Robinetto. The answer is to pull Cerydra, since Robinetto being a third action advancer will brick your Sparkle buff uptime. Then, if it's E1 Cerydra versus Robinetto, the answer is once again, pull Cerydra. Get her E1. Cerydra's E1 is necessary for Robinetto to work in this team outside of specific shilling scenarios. Only once you've reached this point should you pull Robinetto. And yes, Robinetto is going to be better than every other option once you've reached this point of investment on the Phainon Sparkle team. In short, if you're playing the Phainon Sparkle team, Cerydra and Cerydra's E1 are a higher priority, and then Robinetto. For the E0 Cyrene team, let's assume the bare bones team of Phainon, Cyrene, and RMC. If you're looking to pull Cerydra or Robinetto for this last slot, then Robinetto is actually the better pull. However, in an ideal world, you want to play Cerydra and Robinetto together and bench RMC. And most people who play this team probably have Cerydra anyway, so if your team already looks like this, then the question becomes Cerydra E1 versus Robinetto. And in a Cyrene team, the correct answer is Robinetto over Cerydra E1. To make this even simpler, think of it like this. Are you playing a Sparkle team? Prioritize Cerydra E1 over Robinetto. Are you playing a Cyrene team? Prioritize Robinetto over Cerydra E1. Even though both Sparkle and Robinetto can actually full-on replace Cerydra in their respective teams, you would rather just play them together with Cerydra for the best performance. In this way, Cerydra may not be the strongest buffer for Phainon nowadays due to the power level of these generalist supports, but Cerydra is still always the glue that holds the team together and makes up the final piece of Phainon's team building puzzle. But of course, there's still one more big team investment to talk about: E2 Cyrene. E2 Cyrene is still the biggest power spike for Phainon teams when it comes to investing in his supports. But if you're going to ask whether you should skip Cerydra and Robinetto to save up for E2 Cyrene, keep in mind that a Cyrene rerun is nowhere on the horizon, so I would recommend you just stick to the priorities we talked about in the rest of this video if you don't have E2 Cyrene already. And don't worry about E2 Cyrene until her rerun is actually somewhat nearby. This section of the video is mainly for people who already have E2 Cyrene or are already committed to getting E2 Cyrene in the future. If you have E2 Cyrene, I'm also going to assume you at least have Cerydra. So the baseline team is made up of Phainon, Cerydra, and E2 Cyrene. This core trio famously has many options for the final teammate, so let's walk through how Robinetto shakes things up. The main candidates are E1 Tribby, E2 Sparkle, Mortonax Blade, and now Robin Summeretto. Obviously, some of these characters require more Eidolons than others to be worth the team slot, so right off the bat, in terms of cost, Robin is easily the best of the bunch. At E0 S0, she provides so much to the team, and while you could argue it's a downside that her vertical investments aren't very impressive, the fact that you can stop at just one copy of Robinetto and be happy with her on this team is very relevant. In terms of a one-cost wonder, she's always better than Mortonax Blade in this team, so she essentially kicks him out from being considered. Versus E1 Tribby, I found Robin to perform at worst similarly, and at best, much better. E1 Tribby obviously gains value in consistent heavy AoE scenarios, but even then, Robin isn't lagging behind, and in more neutral scenarios, Robin just pulls ahead. E2 Sparkle is a bigger hurdle for Robin. If you already have E2 Sparkle for this team, I don't think you need to pull Robin for Phainon. Even having E1 Tribby available for your Phainon team means that I don't think Robin is a high priority pull. However, if you don't have E2 Sparkle, and if you also don't have E1 Tribby, or your E1 Tribby is required elsewhere, then Robin is a no-brainer upgrade for your Phainon Cyrene team. And if I were to rank everyone on this list, I would rank Robin as the #1 teammate in this team, simply because she's being compared against the rest at just E0 S0. Additionally, one underrated aspect about running Robin on this team is that she makes it much easier to get all 3 of Cyrene's buffs on the entire team. You see, E2 Cyrene gives an additional 6% true damage for every character on the team that has her ultimate buff, even non-Crisis heirs. So you ideally want to use her ult on every teammate before Phainon uses his ultimate to max out her E2's true damage buff. Normally, you would have to use Dance 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 on Cerydra and whoever your last teammate is, whether it be Tribby or Sparkle, if you want to do this without wasting any action value. And on top of this, it would require the Eagle 4-piece set on Cyrene. This way, when Cyrene uses her ultimate and refunds everyone else's ultimates, the combination of DDD procs as well as Cyrene activating Eagle twice would allow her to take another turn and get enough recollection stacks to give her ultimate buff to all 3 allies. However, thanks to Robinetto having a 100% action advance, Cyrene is actually able to give her buff to all 3 teammates, and thus max out her E2 buff without requiring any DDD light cones or Eagle shenanigans on the team, freeing Cerydra up to use a buffing light cone instead, such as her own signature light cone, without losing out on any action value. This means, technically Robinetto even makes Cerydra's own signature light cone better than before in a high investment E2 Cyrene team, due to the DDD no longer having any value. Robin just makes the team feel even easier to play, while providing the strongest buffs cost for cost. She's so strong that she can technically even be a Cerydra replacement in this slot, although again, you would ideally play them together, especially if Cerydra is E1. Speaking of Cerydra E1, the E2 Cyrene team priority is the same as the E0 Cyrene team priority, in that you would rather get Robinetto over Cerydra's E1 if you can only pick one of them. Again, unless you already have one of the Robinetto side grades like E1 Tribby or E2 Sparkle, in which case, E1 Cerydra is competitive with E0 Robinetto for this team. All in all, the Cerydra versus Robinetto debate is actually pretty simple, depending on which Phainon team you're playing. Cerydra and her E1 are more important in a Sparkle team, but Robinetto is more important for a Cyrene team, and she helps E0 Cyrene once again become competitive with E0 Sparkle for Phainon, which is really nice since Cyrene teams are super comfortable to play. If you're eyeing the upcoming Cerydra banner, just keep all of these things in mind as you decide whether you're going to go all in for her, or if you'd like to save some pulls for Robinetto's banner in the next patch as well. Securing the 2 of them together at whatever investment levels required, depending on your team, is going to be a really big upgrade for your Phainon team, assuming Robinetto doesn't get any surprise nerfs. So for all the Phainon mains who are wondering how they should plan their pulls on the upcoming Cerydra banner, especially with Robin Summeretto on the horizon, I hope this video managed to help you. Do note that Robin is technically still in the beta, so if anything changes for her, I'll leave a pinned comment under this video. Not to mention, I'll have plenty of more videos covering the tail end of Robin and Aventurine's beta cycle and how they turned out overall. So consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on that. And like this video if you found it helpful or enjoyable at all. It is always my utmost joy to make videos on the constant updates Phainon seems to get to his teams, and I'll be sure to check back in with Phainon anytime there's more to discuss with him. But that's going to be all for now. So thank you so much for watching, and with all of that said, until next time!